On today's show, I asked you, the listeners, for your questions, and I answer all of them and then some on today's episode of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
What is up, everyone? I am Evan Dammarell, one of the two voices behind Locked On Cavs. I am a credentialed member of the media covering the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Cleveland sports scene at large for Down Euclid, a non-profit news organization based right here in Cleveland, Ohio. Check out our work. This episode was produced by Jake Stevens, and the intro music, as always, was brought to you by our friends at Astral Radio. Thanks again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. We are free and available anywhere and wherever you get your podcasts, and we're on YouTube if you're looking at my mug right now. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which features your team every day. For the last time this week, you're probably wondering why I'm wearing a Japanese Spider-Man t-shirt. Well, as I said on Wednesday, God and your mailbag questions work in mysterious ways. To open up this mailbag, Lauren Gunn asks on Twitter, what is your confidence meter on a Donovan Mitchell extension? And this is an interesting question because I was wrong when I wrote about this for Down Euclid, but there could be a chance that Donovan Mitchell signs an extension with the Cavs, but it's more of a short-term deal. One is a feeling out process, and two, so Mitchell has the added financial luxury to cash in as he heads into his prime because he's still relatively young, all things considered, as a player, but right now, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say my confidence is a 6.5, maybe a tentative 7. I will say the Cavs, and I can confirm what Sean Devaney said, the Cavs are trying to do everything they can to convince Donovan to stay on the back end. They went and got one of his close friends in George Niang from the Utah Jazz. They are making sizable upgrades by getting Max Strus. They got Ty Jerome. They are, of course, banking on internal development of guys like Darius Garland and Evan Mobley and even Jared Allen to maybe hit another level too, and also just other role players, whether it's Karis LeVert or Isaac Okoro. But like the Cavs are in an interesting spot, and I do think it's fair to wonder if Quinn Snyder were available in the coaching market instead of the Atlanta Hawks scooping him up. But the Cavs have considered firing JB Bickerstaff to bring in Snyder to keep Mitchell truly happy, and it's just worth pointing out because Mitchell effused a ton of praise on on Snyder and just how Snyder helped him grow and develop, and he talks about the Quinn Snyder system and adaptability, things like that. But it's neither here nor there. If the Cavs continue to prove to Mitchell that they're committed to winning, they're proving to him that they're committed to not just being like a first round exit or a team that even flames out in the second round, but a team that's legitimately trying to make a push to contend for a conference title, and if things break their way, a championship, that confidence level goes up quite a bit. I think the Cavs, people are kind of putting the cart in front of the horse a little bit. Like, yeah, I know he's extension eligible this summer, so it is going, or not this summer, but the next summer, so I know it's going to be a conversation, but we got to see how this upcoming season pans out first. Like, I've always been of the stance that if Mitchell gives all indications that he's not going to sign an extension with the Cavs, you then entertain the notion of trading him on the last year of his deal, or the second to last year of his deal, because he's a player option in the last year of his deal. But the Cavs have future control. They have Mitchell under contract, and now, as Kobe Altman said, like, it's a two-way street. Like, he's proved to the Cavs that, hey, I was worth what you gave up in terms of Larry Markkinen or Colin Sexton or Ochai Agbaji or the boatload of picks and pick swaps that the Utah Jazz now have from the Cavs. I think he's more than proven that during his play in the regular season. Sure, he flamed out in the postseason. I think all the Cavs did in spectacular fashion, and I don't think you can crystallize individual success just based on what happened in the playoffs, but I don't think you can make any more excuses after this year either. So, like, if this happens again, I think there's a lot more concerning conversations you need to have if you're Cleveland, but just right now, I think it's a 6.57. If the Cavs continue winning and they prove to Mitchell that they're committed to building a winning team around him, and also just like Darius Garland and Evan Mobley as well, and Jared Allen, who I'll talk about in a second. But I'm interested to see how it goes. But I feel fairly comfortable in saying it because like it's all indications seem to say like Mitchell wants to be here. All the conversations have been positive publicly. No one knows what happens privately. If they say they do, they're lying. But The Cavs are definitely putting it out there. And I think Kobe Altman, interestingly, putting like the pressure and onus on himself to say like, hey, it's on the Cavs to build a winner around Donovan Mitchell and just prove to Mitchell that it's worthwhile to stay in Cleveland versus going to a team like New York or whatever. Yeah, it's definitely worth it. And Lauren had another question. She had a series of questions, and I'm going to tackle the second of the three questions in the next segment. But this kind of goes hand in hand with the first one I discussed that she's dropped. And how she asks, how poorly would things have to go for the Cavs to consider moving Allen at the deadline instead of next summer if they intend to move him? I think that's an interesting question. If the Cavs, and I think they're just built as a team that is built for regular season success. I think this is a notion you more so have this conversation heading into the next offseason, and I think it's just going to be inevitably, okay, do the Cavs truly view Evan Mobley as a five? Do they think he's not going to develop as a shooter? Do they think it's more of the passing that's going to accentuate what he is in offense? But it just makes more sense to put a shooting big next to him or somebody who can provide stretchiness at the four spot for him. And also to make life easier for Donovan Mitchell, then yeah, you probably have to trade Jared Allen. And that's the tough part of this business. But you see what the market holds. You see what's available for him. But if things just like went like horribly, horribly wrong, like it has to be something that happened off the court that just make it like inevitable for the Cavs to move Jared Allen right now. And I just don't see it realistically happening right now. I just see a Jared Allen trade coming onto the horizon if the Cavs don't meet or match the expectations that they kind of set for themselves in the regular season. Like they're going to say all the right things leading up to the start of the season, saying like, hey, we were bad. We got to leave the past behind us and focus on what's ahead of us. We need to be a successful team. We know we can't be a successful team, but if they fall apart and crap their pants again in the postseason, like it's going to be a lot of uncomfortable conversations. And I think like Evan Mobley and Darius Garland are firmly cemented as the future for the Cavs, Mitchell or no Mitchell, and Mitchell is part of that future group going forward unless indicated otherwise. And I think just Jared Allen has the unfortunate side effect of being the fourth banana in a core four or whatever you want to call it. And I think you'll see some form of wholesale change from the Cavs because Kobe Altman's going to be probably fighting for his job if the Cavs flame out again in the postseason. Like, I think he has a little bit of job security, but like, it's going to be wholesale changes, whether it's coaching, whether it's like significant roster shakeup. But like, the Cavs play an antiquated style of basketball. They suddenly became a winner because of Evan Mobley, which is kind of unexpected. Even they didn't expect them to be this good right away. And then they acquired Donovan Mitchell. Now the expectation, the onus is shouldn't be just to make the playoffs. It should be to get as far as humanly possible when you hit the postseason. And that's where the conversation about Jared Allen comes in. But I don't think it comes up during the regular season. I think he's so vital and like underappreciated for what he does defensively for the Cavs that it can't be understated like how important that is. But again, I think you have to gauge this off postseason results. Like you can't fully gauge this off the regular season just because they're such completely different beasts that maybe the Cavs then entertain the notion of trading Jared Allen, or things go so well for the Cavs next year that they just kind of keep rocking and rolling this core four and see how far it can take them. That's the beauty of basketball. Sometimes the uncertainty of it, I know, makes some people uneasy, but the Cavs are in a really good spot. Rome isn't burning, as some people may think it is. They were very active at the during free agency, not the trade deadline, excuse me, let's say trade deadline, but they're active, very active during free agency, and they made a lot of the right moves to accentuate and build around not just what they have, but also Donovan Mitchell to prove to him that he's going to be a winner. But I'm going to take a quick break, get a drink of water, and I'm also going to give you a quick word from today's sponsor, Ibotta, before we tackle into more of your amazing questions. As I said today, or before, today's episode of Locked On Cavs is brought to you by Ibotta. Picking up burgers and hot dogs for a summer barbecue? You know you're already doing it, so why not get cash back for it with Ibotta? It's officially summer and a new season means new clothes, but shouldn't be the only thing growing when you make those purchases. Now you can watch your cash back grow with each purchase and look nice for that summer barbecue again with Ibotta. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry goods and so much more, that you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop and get your cash back. It's that easy. The average Ibotta user earns $120 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. Or you could use your cash back to buy that flight you've been eyeing, that game you're dying to go to, or even that fancy dinner that you, as a king or queen, depending on who's listening, deserve. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners just $5 for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKED when you register. Again, register today with code LOCKED and you get $5 when you sign up with Ibotta. Thanks again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Everydayers, it's the end of the week. I'll be back Monday after my bachelor party and a bit of my mental health sabbatical, and maybe I'll be answering some more mailbag questions. Who knows what happens? A lot could change between now and next Sunday when I'm recording all these, but just stay tuned for more Locked On Cavs. So Lauren asked, what do you, and this is our final question, what do you want to see from Mobley next season regarding the next steps of this game? And I think this goes hand in hand with Donovan Mitchell's future. It's such a fluid situation for all these things that just happen to have a common thread, but also like what Jared Allen's future is. And if Mobley develops an outside shot and becomes more of a stretcher for all like a Chris Bosh with the Miami Heat, I think that's a viable path for the Cavs to keep Jared Allen, and also for Evan Mobley to find ways to get easier shot opportunities instead of maybe trying to go into the paint where the defense walls them off because Jared Allen's already down there, or like Isaac Okoro's on the floor, or the Cavs just don't have an overabundance of shooting given the lineup that's on the floor at that time. But if Mobley's shot develops, like that's going to be something I watch like very, very intensely, because it's, as somebody who went to almost every Cavs practice last year, I maybe missed one or two when they were home, and I went to several on the road. Evan Mobley worked all the time with assistant coach Luke Walton on his outside shooting in his perimeter game. And it wasn't even Luke Walton. It was Josh Brockhammer, and Brockhammer was with the team, or even Antonio Lang, even Mike Garrity, and Mike Garrity happened to be up with the Charge, or even Dan Giroux, the former head coach of the Charge and now the big man development coach for the Cavs. Like Mobley worked on his outside shot a ton. He also worked with Kevin Love when Kevin Love was here with his outside shot, and like Mobley and Love both shared, like Mobley picked Love's brain on developing an outside shot. I think it's just something Mobley so, I'm going to say badly, but just wants to add to his offensive repertoire so he can be an impact player on the perimeter, similar to what his brother is at the Charge. But more than that, it's just like, it's clear. Like the Cavs have two big men. They play an antiquated style of basketball. There's a path for him to develop, him as in Mobley as a shooter, because Jared Allen's just not going to develop to that as that shooter, because he's at a much different point development wise than Mobley is. And if Mobley's able to add at least a respectable three-point jumper where it can become part of his game and continue to grow and flourish, then the Cavs are really going to be cooking with something. But if the shot doesn't develop and you say, okay, Evan, you're just not going to be a shooting big man, let's take a little bit more of that Giannis path where like you are the defensive just monster that we all know Evan Mobley's going to be. Like you continue to bulk up and get bigger and stronger so you can handle banging with fives down low, or dealing with guys on the interior more, and the Cavs then pursue an avenue to either get like a stretch five and keep Mobley at the four, or they play Mobley at the five and add a stretcher four next to him. Either way, that's a conversation for down the line, but you want him to kind of keep working on his vision and his overall passing game, and that's the other thing. Like I expect both of these things to develop, both the shot and his passing game and vision, but one is going to supersede the other where it becomes like that staple for Mobley on offense. And like that's the interesting thing with him, because he's at a crossroads in terms of his development. But if the shot doesn't manifest, I'm going to be hyper fixated on how does his handle look, because he talks a lot about last season, like, hey, I want to lead fast breaks, I want to be the ball handler in pick and roll scenarios and do like that big to big passing that the Cavs kind of admitted like it's out of necessity because they play two bigs that thrive on the interior, and they're both kind of they're so tall on the floor that they can see over people when they pass. So it's functional, but like there's a lot of ways you can really accentuate that and grow. And it's not just the pick and roll stuff too. It's like using Mobley as that offensive passing hub so that he can just maximize his potential as a player. So that's what I'm going to be wanting to see Mobley develop. But again, it's going to be both of these things, I think, but like one is going to have to supersede the other and like lead the charge, quote unquote, to become like a key piece for the Cavs. So this is actually a really fun question. Mike Bieber on Twitter asked, which Cavs bench player will surprise Cavs fans, or rather the most casual Cavs fans, the most next year? And I think that's a fun question. I personally think it's going to be Ty Jerome. I think he's just kind of has like that scrappiness to him where he's going to have those moments where he just comes in and just like absolutely annihilates a team from the perimeter, or does something similar to what he did when Golden State had nobody available and he played almost the entire game for the Warriors and beat the Cavs almost entirely by himself. But Ty Jerome is a 6'5" combo guard. I think he's a lot of fun potential. I know it's been reported that like it's not expected for him to be like a guy that's instantly in the rotation, but maybe a guy that is more so pushing Ricky Rubio, especially if Rubio is trying to get back to the floor. But if like Rubio doesn't manifest, Jerome kind of has a cleaner path to be like that combo off-ball guard that plays next to Mitchell and Garland a little bit in some fun lineups. But like, I think he's going to be a guy that pops. I think Damian Jones is going to be a guy that stands out a little bit too, just because the Cavs haven't really invested in backup big minutes or just backup big in general, just behind Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. Like, their options were Ed Davis or even like Tristan Thompson for a hot second, or Andre Drummond until Andre Drummond was sent home permanently. Like, sure, Drummond was younger, Thompson was in the twilight of his career, but like more recently, it's like Ed Davis, it's Robin Lopez. These are guys that are like in their earlies to mid to late 30s that just didn't provide you a ton of meaningful minutes. And now you have a guy like Damian Jones who obviously like isn't in his like early beginnings as a player. Like, he's a guy who's been around for a little bit, but like provides you a little bit of everything that you need in terms of just a backup big, where if there's a night you want to rest Jared Allen or you want to rest Evan Mobley or you rest both of them, like you start Niang at the 4, you start Jones at the 5, and you really lean heavily on Garland and Mitchell in those lineups, and like just have fun with it that way. But like, I think that's just a guy who's going to pop just because he has at least the luxury of youth and athleticism compared to like an Ed Davis or even a Robin Lopez. Like, I think those two are going to pop quite a bit. I think I'm going to lean more towards Jerome just because guards have the ball in their hands more often than not, and Jones isn't a guy who can create for himself or others. So I think it's just a cleaner, more viable way for Ty Jerome to pop, and especially if like Ricky Rubio falters and the Cavs turn to him and like he seizes the momentum and rolls with it, like it could be a lot of fun to see. But we're going to hit another quick pin in this conversation, come back and answer more of your questions, and we'll be back with more Locked On Cavs. So, the final segment for this week of Locked On Cavs, Steve D on Twitter asks, do you expect at some point during the upcoming season that Isaiah Mobley will get a standard contract from the Cavs? And I talked about this a lot in Monday's show and in Wednesday's show, especially on Wednesday's show when we did the lightning round. I think it'd be foolhardy of the Cavs to invest further at the big position because, one, they got Damian Jones for cash considerations from the Jazz, and two, and more importantly, Isaiah Mobley is waiting in the wings, and he's starting to, at least in my eyes, make a bit of a case that he is on the path to being too good for the G League currently and would be better utilized at the next level, rather with the Charge, but with the Cavs. And I think you'd see how he's performing in the G League. I think you see what the Cavs kind of need. Maybe they're still trying to figure out what to do with those last two roster spots to kind of figure out what they need. And maybe you see Mobley get a standard contract towards the trade deadline, but I think he's on the trajectory and the path to get a standard contract of some kind with the Cavs. I personally believe Isaiah Mobley's more than just like hey, we're going to do right by our franchise cornerstone by drafting his older brother. Like, I think he has some legitimate upside to be like a jack of all trades, master of none player for the Cavs, and take advantage of the fact that even though he's not super athletic, like he can provide you passing, shooting, rebounding, some pretty solid defense. He's a little smaller than Evan as well. I think like 6'9", but there's a lot of interesting things that Isaiah Mobley brings to the table. I just think maybe he needs a little bit more of a runway just to kind of keep finalizing how he fits within Cleveland's offensive flow. But with the beauty of a two-way contract, like he can practice the Cavs, he can travel with the team, the Cavs want him on assignment, and then like if he's not getting any minutes or burn or run on the floor, like you send him down to the Charge and let him just kind of keep his legs fresh and kind of make sure he's just not getting too rusty while sitting on the bench. But there could be opportunities, there could be chances, like I had mentioned, like let's say you rest Evan Mobley and Jared Allen one night and you start George Niang and Damian Jones in his place. Like, I think Isaiah Mobley then could crack the rotation, and if he plays well in those limited minutes, whether it's like 5 or 10, like you keep rewarding that play and he follows like a little bit of a similar path to Lamar Stevens or Dean Wade, where like you have to keep earning the trust of the coaching staff by doing the right things and making the quote-unquote winning plays when they're on the floor in order to just see if that maximizes the team success and things like that. But no matter what, I think by no later than the trade deadline, if the Cavs do make a move, maybe they have that open roster spot still, and they have a guy who's either popping with the Charge or a guy who's just doing really well in the G League who's currently unsigned. They sign Isaiah Mobley to some form of a standard contract. I would assume it's like a Kobe Altman special where it's like littered with options and just not deadlines for when the money becomes guaranteed and things like that. And you sign that guy who's either popping for the charge or just in the G League in general to that open two-way spot, and you keep developing them next to Amani Bates and next to Craig Porter Jr., and you just kind of keep developing this back-end rotational talent for guys that can be your fourth or fifth dude at a certain spot. In Mobley's case, he'd be your fourth or fifth big man behind Jones and his younger brother and Jared Allen, which is kind of the role he always envisioned having when he was first drafted by the Cavs, not this summer, but last summer. So, friend of the program, Greg Swartz, did ask me, does my back hurt from carrying Chris Manning all these years? And, brother, I will say that I have been doing this podcast for, gosh, when was the pandemic? Almost over 3 years now, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I don't think anyone knows this, but Chris has approached me several times before I came on the show on a permanent basis about how much I hate the sound of my voice, and I'm sure plenty of you do too, but at least I empathize with you guys because I hate the sound of my voice, and I can't imagine wanting to hear me 3 to 5 times a week. But Chris was a godsend. He helped me find my voice. He helped me stay sane when the pandemic really took off and we were all stuck inside, and I'm forever thankful for Locked On Cavs. I'm forever thankful for the friends I've made, whether it's the guys at the Chase Down or it's Mac over at It's Cavalier, or any of the guys on Cavs Twitter, or anyone who's just in our awesome little Locked On Cavs community. Like, I run into so many people on the street to Cleveland saying like, "Hey, you're Evan from Locked On Cavs," and I've always had nothing but pleasant fan interactions, or listener interactions rather, and people like to ask my insight, my thoughts on stuff, and I'm always happy to talk shop. But you guys are cool, and I would never say I'm carrying the load. I'm always happy to pick up the slack and help wherever I can. That's just kind of how I am, much to my fiance's frustration. But Chris really changed my life for the better because he wanted me to come on a permanent basis after bugging me for years, and he just happened to catch me at the right time. Just lost my job, and I had a bunch of free time on my hands, and then the entire world shut down. So kudos to Chris Manning. Kudos to you guys. I'm going to head out for the weekend. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay cool, and I will see you on Monday. Either Chris will be back or it'll just be me by myself. But until next time, I'm Evan Dammarell. Jake Stevens again produced this show, and this is Locked On Cavs.